What's going on, guys? Openhand here, back with another last Epoch video. Just figured I'd go ahead and show you the final version of the build that I've been working on all season. This video is probably going to be a lot like the first one, where I go like in depth on everything, just because between this part and the last part, I figured there's enough stuff to kind of go over again, so I don't have to link a bunch of different parts to people that want to know what the build's all about. But yeah, this is 2000 corruption here. I'm still not really having any issue. I'm sure it can go a little bit further. How much, I do not know, but yeah, still no issue at 2000, so with that said, I will just run through the Psycho here. So we got a slay some champions, sounds good. One of the new additions, I mean, you can probably tell already, is that I've added Abyssal Echoes in here. And I gotta be honest, the skill is insane for damage. It boosted damage so much. I'll go to the dummies later and kind of show you guys just how much damage this adds. But this, along with shield throw against bosses, it's just so much more damage than I was doing prior. So to do that, though, I had to get rid of healing hands, and I am now using a unspec'd lunge for my movement skill here. I guess it's one of like the rare things that is kind of nice. That Forge Guard could do that Paladin can't, since Paladin's always running Holy Aura. They don't have room for Abyssal Echoes, but being Forge Guard, we have the room, so we can take advantage of the damage and everything. There, and I'm missing a lot of stuff. Let's see. Nope, little loot guy. Yeah, obviously, you know, the unspec lunge isn't as good for movement, but I think it's well worth the trade-off. A lot of the reason I was running, you know, healing hands before was because I was still fighting Uber Aberoth a lot, and you know, being able to have that mobility and invincibility, needing to get out of a bad situation was kind of nice. But now that I'm basically just doing monos and stuff all the time, Abyssal Echo is definitely the way to go here. Definitely the way to go. And basically what I'll do, I'll just throw Abyssal Echoes on mobs, and then I'll just throw Spheres. I don't even really bother with shield throw, unless there's like a champion or some kind of like elite of some sort. So, it's like the last one over here. See here, and then I'll throw a shield against like champions and stuff. But yeah, that's basically how build plays. A little bit different, but more or less the same. Get the lizard real quick. All right. So I guess I'll head over to the arena here. Just kind of show you guys a little bit of numbers on the target dummy for those interested. I do a bit more damage than I did last video, so I'll show you the tooltip here in a minute. But obviously, with the Abyssal Echoes, I do even more damage. But my base damage on the tooltip's a little bit more too. Finally got over 800,000, which is quite nice. Again, still not in the Paladin territory, but still really good damage. And again, obviously being Forge Guard, we can survive way more than you know, Paladins can. So as you can see, I'm a little bit over 800,000. If I'm fighting the dummies, the boss dummy, and I'm just throwing spears without any stuff here, I get generally around 750,000 to 760,000, as you can see. With just Abyssal Echoes, it goes up a lot. I think close to like, I think 950,000 or so. I'll show you. It's a lot more damage. And you get the attack speed on top of it. And if I do Abyssal Echoes with shield throw, I get well over 1 million. So again, huge damage increase compared to last time here. So, and what I do generally, like, is I will hold down Q and W, just hold them down, because I'll just make it cast as soon as I can. There's like no lag time really. So yeah, those are the numbers. So a bit more damage. As far as, I guess we'll go into the passives real quick here. Again, a lot of these passives are pretty much going to be the same. If you see my other videos, not too much has changed, just a little bit to be able to get Abyssal Echoes over here in the Void Knight thing. But, 8 points in Juggernaut for the strength and resistance, 6 points in the Furious for the vitality and health regen. I still got a little bit of health regen, not as much as I did in my first video, but, still a little bit. I think having a little bit is always nice. So, 300 or so, not bad. So the increased health regen does matter a little bit. Armorclad for the reduced damage taken, and obviously the 1 point here for Stalwart for the block chance. Void Knight, probably I guess the biggest change here compared to the last videos that I put 5 points over here in the Devouring Blade so I could grab Abyssal Echoes for the additional damage and attack speed. And there's some fish shred or something on it. So, but not a bad node at all. I mean, you get some damage, you get some leech, so it's fine. And then over here in Paladin, 8 points into Conviction for the increased physical pen and damage. And we do a little bit of lightning damage too, so increased lightning damage and the increased lightning pen is not useless. 5 points in Defiance for the elemental resistance, really, and the endurance threshold increase for the 5 point bonus. 2 points in the Valor for a little bit of endurance. 5 points in the Holy Icon for the health, necrotic resistance, and the health regen. 6 points in the Force of Devotion for the throwing attack damage and the armor shred, and 5 points in the Piety for the resistances and the 5% more damage to electrified enemies. Now the way that I'm doing this is, again, I've showed this prior, but I got a little bit of lightning damage, so the lightning pen is not completely useless. I did move 1 point from Holy Spears over to Excellent Balance, so I can to avoid mana problems because I am casting Abyssal Echoes all the time now. So mana was getting kind of like to be a little bit of an issue. But once they finally fix Keen Outlook, I definitely think these points are going to go over there. But right now, Keen Outlook, if you're not familiar with it, seems to not do anything. At least if you have Spike Bombardment or Siege Barrage, rather. So for now, I'm got it in the Holy Spears, and it still does increase my damage, but quite a bit. And again, having a little bit of lightning pen from Piety is nice for stuff like that, and I do have a little bit of lightning damage on my helmet as well. So it's not huge, but it's not completely useless, is my point. But even once I switch stuff over to, let's see here, once I switch stuff over to Keen Outlook, I still think I'll keep Piety just because the 5% increased damage is really good. And obviously the more damage you do, the more beneficial the 5 points to electrified enemies is. Now, the way that we're electrified enemies is through Smite. I talked about this a little bit last time. But basically what I did is I went over here and I got the Piety node here, which basically makes it guaranteed when you smite something, it gets electrified. And then I also took Order of Lagan here, which turns into electric. And then down here, Unbalanced Scales basically sends out these lightning bolts when you smite something. And these lightning bolts do electrocute stuff. So anything that is by these lightning bolts is also electrocuted, so it just makes mobbing much easier. And I also put a couple points in the Wandering Bolts just so I can make sure that I'm electrocuting the entire pack of enemies whenever I throw a smite out. Something to point out too is that with Seraphins, the spears that come off this can also proc smite. So it's very, very easy to electrify the entire mob and get that additional 5% increase to bonus damage. Now, after that, in the Forge Guard tree, something really weird happened. I don't know why this happened, but for some reason, my shield block chance went up to 26. It was sitting at 25, so I had to have Steel Aegis to get the 100% block chance. But now that for some reason it changed to 26, I don't need it anymore, and I was able to just put points up here into Weapon Masters for a little bit more strength. There's really no other notes to put it in, but I guess having a little bit of strength is probably a little bit better than 10 armor and a little bit more blocking effectiveness, considering the block chance is useless. So I went ahead and did that. So 9 points in the Weapon Master, 1 point in the Fresh from the Forge, just so we can get over to Champion of the Forge. So we get the critical multiplier per 2 strength with two-handed weapons, which is really, really nice. Guardian up here for the health and the stun chance, and again the health regen is always nice as well. 4 points in the Iron Reflexes. I talked about some of my previous videos. A lot of 4GRs max this out. I don't think it's worth it, just because the dodge rating to armor is only applied at the end of all your when all that's the word I'm looking for. When everything's applied already, basically, is my point. Like all your armor buffs and everything are applied. So you end up only netting probably about like 200 or 300 armor, which might move your armor up like 1% or something like that, right? But if you don't take that, if we're in a level 100 area, I have 10% dodge chance. So I just think that's way better as far as survivability goes. To have a flat 10% chance to dodge all incoming attacks, as opposed to having like maybe a 1% increase in armor. And again, this only applies while you're moving, by the way, even the armor part of it. So yeah, in my opinion, this is just way better to have 4 here, unless you really need the crit chance or something for the dex, which if you're not familiar, a Javelin here will give you crit chance based on the amount of dex that you have if you have the 4-point bonus. But I have 100% crit chance with just having the 8 dex here. So, and with the other point to move stuff along, I have 1 point in the might. So that brings us over to Crusader, which 4 points here, so I can get over to Javelin here. Max this out because this is crit multiplier, which is just a lot of damage. 1 point in the Flawless Defender, so we get up here in the walls of Solarums, so we have that additional less damage taken. It doubles if you have over 50% block chance, so that is very nice. Ends up being 10%, so huge node there. Force Master's Might, obviously. This lets you equip the 2-hander and a shield. And then 5 points in the Master of Arms. I had to take 3 out of this so I could put points over here into Devouring Blade in order to get Abyssal Echoes. But it's still fine. Obviously, you lose a little bit of strength, but the frailty doesn't matter. And the reduced damage from crits, we are still over 100, so no issue there. But yeah, that is the passives for the skills here. For Shield Throw, basically what you want to do is come down here and get Colossus, so you deal with more damage. And you grab Defender's Rage for the Frenzy, and then Vampiric Steel for the Leech. The Leech is really, really good if you're fighting like a hard enemy, particularly Uber Aberoth. This helps a lot. So, yeah, those are the 4 main nodes you want to go after. With any extra points, just you want to grab this for some Ricochet. And I just went with Ironmonger for a little bit more Armor Shred. Abyssal Echoes, the main new thing, I guess, here. You want to go over here and grab Embrace of Darkness. This will basically increase the damage that you do against blinded, and it'll boost your attack speed. And then you want to go over here, max out Turbulence, because you're going to grab Fragility over here, which basically Abyssal Decay will cause enemies to have reduced physical resistance. So the longer that Abyssal Decay lasts, the longer this will last as well. Want to grab Myopia, so you can blind the enemies with Abyssal Decay, so you can benefit from the 20% increase in damage. And then up here you want to go and grab Dark Torrent, so you can basically put Abyssal Echoes wherever the mob is, essentially. So you cast Abyssal Echoes and just start spamming Javelins and do a lot more damage. I also went over here and grabbed Deep Expanse for the increased area, just so I can hit as many enemies as I can. And one thing to kind of note, and this is up to you if you want to do it, I just don't really see the point because the cooldown on Abyssal Echoes is so quick, and it's like 5 seconds. So going mob to mob, it basically works out pretty nicely. But you can put more points in the Blinding Flash if you want to remove some from Panacea or something. So you can blind stuff with your Javelins as well. So if you're going, it makes it basically so you don't have to use Abyssal Echoes to reliably blind stuff. You can, I mean, you still have a 10% chance here, but if you max this out, it becomes 50 and stuff. Basically, it's blinded all the time if you have this maxed out. But again, I still really see the point because I'm casting Abyssal Echoes so often as is. And I do like the cleanse, just in case, there's some pretty nasty damage over time stuff out there. But yeah, and then for the last few points, I just grab the slow here. I mean, I didn't really see anything else. Corrupting Harness might be worth it. I'm not really sure how Chain works, to be honest, but when I cast it, it seems to pretty much hit every enemy in the area. So they all are blinded, which is really all I need because I get the buff, and then I can do the additional damage. But yeah, after that, got the Javelin tree over here. As I said prior, Holy Spears, I will eventually move this over to Keen Outlook once this gets fixed, just because it will do much more damage for sure. But right now this seems bugged, so best place to put your points, your extra points, would be in Holy Spears. But you want to come up here, grab Strategic Patience for some damage. You lose a little bit of attack speed, but the damage definitely outweighs it. Max Force for a hurl. Obviously, if you're standing still, you're going to do a lot more damage. Try to stand still, especially against bosses. Let's see here. Max out Mighty Delivery. Obviously, come over here, Siege Barrage, Spike Bombardment. However many points you need in Beast Cinder to hit, 100% crit. It's obviously dependent. And then Monster Piercer over here for the increased damage. Max that out. And again, any additional points you have, I would just throw it in the Holy Spears at the moment. Smite, talked about. Went over here, make it so you can electrify stuff and electrify mobs, basically. And then you want to go over here to Righteous Fury, so you get the additional attacking and cast speed. And then for Holy Symbols, you want to grab the Endurance. Obviously, you want to grab both of the additional symbols. I'm going to go over here and grab the Block Chance. Meditation's nice, so you can double your health regen. And then with the additional points, you just basically put them over here into Empowering Symbols. And that is the skills. Let's see here. As far as the blessings go, if I can remember how to do this, I take the blessing from Lagan, the regen one. Even though, again, we don't have a ton of regen, having a little bit of regen is really nice, and there's really not much more you can take from Lagan that's beneficial. I take the block chance from here on here at 8% with 230 block effectiveness. It's really important to get the 8% block chance, though, so you can hit the 100% block chance thing. So, oops. And then over here, you want to take the armor from the shamans. And this was a change that I made pretty recently where instead of the resistances, I decided to take the increased physical damage simply because my resistances were like way over capped, and I just felt like it was a little bit more beneficial to have the increased damage instead of the resistances. Obviously, my lightning and cold are a little bit low, so I don't get the full benefit from null portent on those, but everything else is fine. I think the payoff is fine, and having used it for a while now, I think it's well worth it. But yeah, with that, I guess let's go ahead and get into the gear. In my previous gameplay video, I mentioned that I found a 3 LP Seraphins, and I finally found a spear that I decided to put in it, and I hit the roll that I wanted. I got the increased physical damage, the melee damage, and the increased physical pen. I think it boosted my damage by about 30,000 in the tooltip, so a little nice increase there. But yeah, I mentioned this in my first video where you can basically run this build without Seraphins, but eventually you're going to want to get this. But like when you're leveling and stuff, you'll still do plenty of damage with just a generic spear and using spike bombardment and stuff, you'll be fine. But eventually you do want to get the spear because it's very, very strong. My helmet, I've added lightning damage up here with some strength and quite a bit of health. I was able to seal throwing critical strike chance, which is really nice. So just a very solid helmet overall. It might be worth going just increase throwing damage instead of the Javelin lightning throwing damage, especially once they go ahead and fix Keen Outlook, just because you're not going to have the lightning damage anymore or as much. So that might be better as far as damage goes, but still, solid helmet. Got Nihilus here with a throwing damage on that. So you just find an LP and throw a tier 7 throwing damage. That's probably your best bet. Null portent, 11 dex, and then you got some increased health here. Majasa shield, again, for some reason the block chance changed, but I got the increased physical here, and I take the reduced damage on block. I think that's probably a bit better than any kind of block effectiveness. Red rings, if you can get them, are really, really good, especially since we're running null portent, so the 20% to all resistance that you get on these is really, really nice to be able to like cap out these resistance so you get that damage reduction. But obviously they're not easy to get. Best bet if you're Circle of Fortune, just spam prophecies, and eventually you'll get them. A belt here, just basically go for health, and you want a rejuvenating spider soak too for the resistances. So, but throwing damage and health is basically what you're after. Red ring. Again, I kind of talked about this in the previous video, but you want to focus on attack speed on one ring, and throwing damage and reduce cost on the other ring. Just because if you want to maximize your DPS. Raucous Claws. If you want to prioritize throwing attack speed, I got strength and increased health on this, which is solid. I think if you could get throwing damage instead of strength, that's probably better. But hybrid health and strength are still really, really nice to have. Foot of the Mountain. I decided to put a T7 movement speed on here just because I hate being slow. It might be better just to go T7 hybrid health, but yeah, either or I think is fine. So if you can find a 2LP of this, which is pretty easy, either a T7 hybrid health or a T7 movement speed, and then a T5 movement speed or a T5 hybrid health is probably your best bet. And then Shattered Worlds if you can get it. With one LP, just to throw Javelin on here, obviously for some throwing damage and more Javelin skill points. For my idols here, basically what you want to take is throwing critical strike multiplier with some block effectiveness. I have, I think, 4 of these. Actually, no, I do have one with endurance because I needed the endurance. So if you need the endurance, you can obviously get that, but the rest are critical strike chance and multiplier. And then you want to make sure that you have at least one idol that casts smite when you throw stuff. I think 1 is fine just because you attack very fast. And again, we're not doing damage with smite. We're just basically using smite to electrify our enemies. So having 1 is totally fine. If you're fighting Uber Aberoth, though, I mentioned this prior, you probably want 2 just so you can reliably have that cleanse go off because cleanse is super important in that fight. And then with the other idols, just kind of whatever you need as far as resistances go and damage goes. It's basically it. But yeah, I think that's everything. I think it's probably the final video that I put out, at least for the season. Sorry if I sound a little sluggish. I'm a little under the weather today. But yeah, I think that's everything. If I forgot something, I will pin a comment and talk about it there. Or if you have any questions, let me know. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Thanks for watching.